Okay, great. Feel free to pop into the comments and then we'll also have some Q&A available. I suspected there'd be a mixed group, so this is great. And lots of representation from different facilities and different roles, so that's great. I kind of created this presentation to be not specific to a role or an area, so that is helpful that we have a mixed bag. Okay. Oh, no, of course I'm not. There we go. So the objectives of this presentation are to learn the key principles of strength-based communication and how it can improve workplace relationships, understand how focusing on individual strengths can reduce misunderstandings and prevent conflict, explore practical tools to communicate effectively with colleagues, residents, and their families, and gain insights into how strength-based communication can create a supportive and positive work environment. The expected outcomes for you today are to feel more confident using strength-based communication in your daily interactions, apply techniques that highlight strength to prevent miscommunication and workplace conflict, and to leave with practical tools to create a more supportive, purpose-driven work environment. So there's going to be 2 check your knowledges. This is the first. I like to make presentations somewhat interactive without putting people on the spot and asking you to share. Today, the video and the audio is not on, so we're just going to be using the comments and comment section. But this is also, that's also just a gentle suggestion. You don't have to use that if you don't want to. Grab a piece of paper. If you're paper and pen, if you're old school like I am, I still use paper and pen, or your phone, notes, computer, whatever way you jot down information, just to sort of go through it. And then it's good notes for yourself as well. So checking your current knowledge, the first section would be posing the question of what is strength-based communication to you? So what do you know about it? Do you have a definition in your mind? Is this something you're really familiar with? Are you hearing about it for the first time today? So yeah, just jot that down. And even if you don't know what it is, but you have an idea, do you think you use it in your workplace, and why or why not? So just take a couple of minutes to jot down some notes. This can also be, if you have questions, this can be a good place to mark them down, and then you can ask them at the end. Hopefully they'll get answered during the presentation. Yeah. And also just a note, I cannot figure out how to present my slides and see my notes. So I also have my notes written out. So if you see my eyes kind of jutting to my left, it's because I'm looking at my notes.
Someone said in the chat, not sure what strength-based communication means.
That's okay. We're going to go through it. So this presentation, I created it as it could be a refresher for people that use it all the time. It can be a great info for if you don't know what it is. We'll talk about what it is. We'll provide some definitions. And then the hope would be that you feel more informed by the end of it, or at least refreshed if you already are super informed. Yeah. So let's dig in. What is strength-based communication? Well, strength-based communication focuses on highlighting the positive aspects and potentials of individuals, groups, or communities, rather than dwelling on weaknesses or strengths. It emphasizes folks' strengths, abilities, and resilience, fostering a more empowering and authentic communication style. And we will talk about more about authentic communication later, sort of in the second half. It promotes positive relationships and builds trust, reduces misunderstandings, and prevents conflicts. So why use the strength-based approach to communication? It values the capacity, skills, knowledge, connections, and potential in individuals and communities. Focusing on strength doesn't mean ignoring the challenges or spinning the struggles into strengths. Healthcare professionals that work in this way, they work in collaboration, helping people do things for themselves. In this way, people can become co-producers of support, not passive consumers of support. So a co-producer of support is actively involved in the creation or delivery of support services, while a passive consumer of support is primarily a recipient of services without significant participation in their creation or their delivery. Co-production shifts the focus from a traditional provider-client, provider-resident relationship to a more collaborative one, where both parties contribute to the outcome. Co-production often aligns with strength-based approaches. Strength-based approaches concentrate on the inherent strength of individuals, families, groups, and organizations, deploying personal strength to aid recovery and empowerment. In essence, to focus on health and well-being is to embrace, that should be an asset-based approach where the goal is to promote the positive. So examples of strength-based communication. Use person-first language. For example, use person with a disability in place of a disabled person. Use active voice. For example, you can change the sentence, the resident was asked to take a survey, into active voice by naming who asked the resident to take the survey. With this change, the sentence could read, the clinical nurse coordinator asked the resident to take a survey, or CNC Jane asked the resident to take a survey. Honoring self-identification by ensuring that you're referring to individuals or groups in a way that reflects their identity. This is one reason why sharing pronouns is important. If you're unsure how a person self-identifies, it's better to ask than assume. We should never be assuming how someone else identifies. So more examples of strength-based communication. Uphold clarity by using proper nouns as needed. What is a proper noun? I can never remember. I literally had to look it up. Oxford Dictionary. I can never remember adjective, adverb, verb. I get them all confused. So proper noun, according to Oxford Dictionary, says that it's the name used for an individual person, place, or organization, spelt with initial capital letters. For example, the name Gary, the place Canada, and Edmonton Oilers. Using or that to refer to key concepts can confuse people and take away from your core message. Too often, these words are used to tiptoe around the person, system, or organization that oppresses. So also, normalize challenges and emphasize supporting rather than saving people. At some point, we all face challenges and will need support to help us navigate them. Too often, we read a story of a challenging situation that shows that a program saved someone. The strength-based approach names the challenge and the support while highlighting the strength that the person used to become successful. Lastly, respect and invite the voices and experience of the people you serve. A strength-based approach invites people to share their own stories. It also seeks to include people so that they have influence over how they are portrayed and how their stories are told. Okay, so think of a miscommunication with a colleague in your current workplace. Or if you can't think of one, think of miscommunication with a resident or their family or loved one. So, what was the cause? What do you think was the cause of that? What was the outcome? So, the outcome of miscommunication. How could it have looked different if you applied strength-based communication? So, or maybe you did, and there was a miscommunication. You already know what strength-based communication is. You applied it, everything was sorted. So this is kind of open-ended to whatever your experience was. In all of this, there's no right or wrong answers. It's all just your experiences, your words. So no right or wrong, just really just your learning and your experiences. So yeah, if you wouldn't mind sharing in the comments, you can, I'd suggest not naming names or organizations. You can just say conflict with, you could even just name some vague details of the situation, but it's really about why was there was miscommunication, what was the cause of it, what was the outcome, and could that have looked different if you'd applied strength-based communication? So yeah, just feel free to post it. Oops, hold on, there we go.
Someone said busy workload during shift work with another nurse.
Mm.
Another person said client with similar names. Cause assumptions about intention, not communicating the expectations, not introducing self or purpose of interaction, assuming what someone else wants from the conversation. Someone else said not having all the information in the conversation.
Mm.
Coworkers assuming something but not clearing up the details, etc.
Mm.
This one gives a situation. Annoyed at a clerk for not doing tasks for 2 weeks. She said she needed help, and I said she could have asked for help 2 weeks ago. She said whatever, and my head exploded inside. I did the task myself in 5 minutes and avoided her for the rest of the day, so I didn't snap at her.
Mm.
There's more comments on frustration and miscommunication, different expectations,
Mm.
supervisor stress and the side effects of that, conflicts with the supervisor, an email not attended to, assumptions made, both sides left feeling disrespected.
Mm.
Also, another good one is people with different language barriers or an accent.
Mm. 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 Okay, thanks everybody for sharing. Um, it was really insightful, and I appreciate your vulnerability to just share some of the experiences that you had. Some themes that come up are obviously challenges, language barriers, focusing on language barriers as a challenge instead of what might also be going on. Assumption, assumption, assumption. We'll talk a bit more about assumption. And Chris and I were actually speaking about this in our little pre-meeting, but and we can talk a bit more about this maybe in the questions and answer if we have time. But the idea that for strength-based communication to really thrive, leadership needs to be on the same page. And we know that doesn't always happen. So create this presentation. I know that there's often a disconnect between management and frontline staff, folks who are doing shift work. There's not always time to have the communication handover. And so a lot of times there's these big situations and the expectation is know everything, understand it, read 2 pages of notes in 30 seconds, and it's not very realistic. So I just want to say that I acknowledge that how hard this can be and that folks are dealing with more than just a miscommunication. There's often many things behind it. And so the idea behind strength-based communication tools, and then we're going to talk about authentic communication in a moment, is just really like putting your best foot forward. And if you feel comfortable with it and you're doing it, that's really all you can control. It would be great if everybody understood a little bit more about how to do it, and but that's not always the case. But we're recording this, so maybe. And yeah, so anyways, thank you again. We will, we will have more time to talk at the end as well, but really appreciate that and gaining some insight on some of the things that folks are dealing with. Um, okay, so second part, checking your knowledge, part two, if you will. So what is authenticity in communication? What is authentic communication? Um, do you know? Do you have a belief about what it is? Are you confused? So no problem. Again, there's no right or wrong answers. And do you think you use authentic communication in your workplace? So today we're just also to be clear, we're talking about workplace. Of course, that crosses over to personal life, but we're putting that as the primary foot forward as workplace. So what is authenticity in communication? Do you use it in your workplace, and why or why not? So this is, again, self-directed learning. Pop it in the comments if you want, but really just writing down notes. It's a good gauge to see where you're at this moment, and then in 10 minutes, hopefully a little bit more knowledgeable. So yeah, just take a couple minutes to do that.
Someone says being honest and genuine to foster trust and respect for all involved. Someone said it is about being honest, transparent, and consistent with words and actions. Another one, being true to yourself and your values, being honest, transparent as much as appropriate when having a conversation. More about transparency, and another important one, active listening.
Mhm. Okay, great. Yeah. So authenticity in communication. Oh, on PowerPoint. Means being genuine and true to oneself while expressing thoughts and feelings openly and honestly. Honestly. Wow. It involves aligning what you say and how you act with your values and beliefs, while also being mindful of the context and audience. Authentic communication fosters trust, builds credibility, and strengthens relationships. We know that showing up as your authentic self in all aspects of your life is advantageous, especially in communication. I shouldn't assume we all know that, to be honest. I have found research, I on my own have found, research has found, so I can say evidence-based um, research shows that showing up as your authentic self in all aspects of your life is advantageous. It just creates a bit more of an ease in communication and being more in your body and therefore being more present. When you're authentic in your communication, it can, yeah. Okay, so I should have just read from the slide. It can create ease in interactions that are more straightforward with better, more complete outcomes. Whether you're providing complicated information, sharing bad news, or supporting a family grieving a loss, how you communicate information can make a difference. And when in doubt, be yourself. So, key elements in authentic communication are honesty and transparency, being truthful and straightforward in your communication, self-awareness, understanding your own values, beliefs, and emotions, active listening, paying attention to and understanding the perspectives of others, respect and empathy, showing respect for the feelings and opinions of others, clear and direct communication, expressing your thoughts and feelings in a clear and understandable way, knowing your own voice, developing a personal style of communication that's authentic to you, and vulnerability, sharing your thoughts and feelings openly and honestly, even when it's difficult. And so vulnerability requires trust as well. The two go hand in hand to be successful. So why is authentic communication important in healthcare? Improved resident-provider relationships. Authenticity help builds trust and rapport, leading to more open and honest communication. Enhance resident experience. When residents feel heard and understood, they're more likely to be satisfied with their care. Better health outcomes. Authentic communication can lead to improved resident adherence to treatments plans and better overall health outcomes. Reduce burnout. It's a big one. Authenticity can also contribute to the well-being of healthcare professionals, reduce burnout, and promote job satisfaction. So more participant sharing, this time on authentic communication. So think of a time when you did not use authentic communication in your current workplace. What was the outcome? And how could it look different if you used authentic communication? So if you wouldn't mind sharing that experience in the comments, we'll be able to look through them and So when you didn't use authentic communication, how did that work out? So what happened? Mm.
Yeah, multitasking, not truly engaged. My response was taken as apathetic, passive aggressive behavior with other staff.
Mm. Mm.
Missed crucial information.
Mm.
Animosity at the workplace. Someone said they realized later people felt threatened. And creates distrust between employees, management, and unions, high grievances, negative cycle of gossip and assumptions, no effective communication. Another one perceived as threatening or disrespectful.
Mhm. Okay, this is great sharing. Thanks again, everybody. I really appreciate it. Um, Lots of themes coming up, but really sort of the main underlying theme is if you're not using authentic communication, lots of challenges can come up, and some pretty big ones. And so to do the authentic communication, it does sometimes require taking a minute and just focusing on, why am I here? What am I really trying to say? And just also the honesty around like there is triggers, there is, um, we're human beings, we have response. And we have a response to being disrespected. And sometimes it's outright disrespect, sometimes it's we're feeling disrespected. It doesn't matter. We're entitled to feel what we feel. And the best thing we can do as health professionals is try to support one another. We don't always do that. And that's when conflict happens. But if folks are doing their best, putting their best foot forward, trying to apply new learning, we have to be patient. We have to walk alongside them. That's really the only way that this works, that this is effective. So, that sometimes means time and patience and more learning, but it's kind of everybody's responsibility. It's not just the folks that are here today learning about this. Yeah. So again, appreciate your comments. Yeah. Okay. Case study. I do love case studies, but this one is a little bit, to be honest, is a little bit from my own life, and a little bit of my experience. So it is made up. It's not an actual case study because I don't have access to a case study that would be appropriate from a residential long-term care setting. So bear with me. I did try to create something that I thought would be realistic. So case study is about Norm. So the care plan for a resident at Cherry Blossom, made up residence, um, has changed due to their medical condition deteriorating. And their involvement in activities has stopped. They basically sit in a chair all day, don't want to engage, don't even really want visitors. And staff would like to discuss this with Norm's family as it is a significant change. Since Norm's wife, who was also a resident at Cherry Blossom, died 2 years ago, Norm has become increasingly sedentary and withdrawn, with a slow decrease in both cognitive and physical functioning. Norm has a DNR. Norm has two daughters who are both power of attorney and trustees. They come to visit their father regularly, but often at different times. Um, and so there's not a lot of opportunity to talk to them both together. They don't include Norm in discussions with staff in his room, and they often talk about him as if he isn't there and talk for him and don't include him in the conversation. Yeah. So Norm, Cherry Blossom, dealing with grief and loss, sedentary, withdrawn, and a decrease in cognitive and physical functioning. Two daughters that are actively involved, but not super straightforward on how to proceed. So, how to ensure that Norm is cared for effectively using strength-based communication with Norm and their family. And hold on, let me move my face. Norm and their family, and that you're putting your authentic self forward in the conversation. So think about how to approach this using honest, open, strength-based, authentic communication. What's a good first step? How would you include both Norm and the daughters so they feel empowered, they being Norm and the daughters, and their input is welcome? Yeah. So would love to hear your thoughts on how to work through this. What are the next steps for Norm? Also, maybe the case study is like, you're way off, Kate. We've never seen that before in our life. That's okay. Yeah, feel free to pop it in the chat. Just some ideas, focusing off on authentic communication, strength-based communication. Yeah.
Someone said, first invite everyone, including Norm and the daughters, to meet. Another person said to talk about some things in the past that he enjoyed or liked to do. Another person said invite both daughters to the site and have a conversation with him involved. Ask if they would be open to meet and discuss how he was doing and hear all members' questions, concerns, perspectives. Another care conferences between daughters as POA, Norm, and interdisciplinary team with physicians to discuss concerns and issues. Bill of Rights with residents and families. Yeah, a lot on meeting with the daughters, ensuring a care plan is up to date, and taking the lead in addressing Norm directly. Someone else said, I think my first step would be to talk with Norm and share my observations and ask for his perspective on the changes.
Okay, that's great.
If the daughters address you about issues as if Norm is not there, gently say, let's include Norm in this discussion.
Okay, this is great. Thank you so much, everybody, for your thoughts, for your experiences, your suggestions. Yeah, again, every time, lots of themes coming up, but choice, empowerment, involvement of everybody. I mean, it goes without saying that it's always advantageous to include the person that you're talking about in the discussion. That can be really helpful. Yeah, so really appreciate this. Thank you. Got a couple more slides to go to summarize. Okay. So today we discussed the key principles of strength-based communication and how it can improve workplace relationships. We talked about focusing on individual strengths, can reduce misunderstandings and prevent conflict. Looked at tools to help communicate effectively with colleagues, residents, and their families. And gained insights into how strength-based communication can create a supportive and positive work environment. So some things to remember: employ strength-based and authentic communication whenever possible. Avoid assumptions, language that perpetuates stereotypes or diminishes value. Avoid losing your confidence. You know what you're doing and believe in yourself. So here's some additional helpful tools. I obviously wrote this before I saw the comments, but the first one is a big one for me. Learn how to take a deep resetting breath during the conversation that no one knows you're taking. So this can be just taking a minute that avoids the reaction. So head can explode on the inside. I mean, hopefully not, but big deep breath, just recentering ourselves and then carrying on from there. Of course, there's like big feelings and things can be overwhelming. So just taking a minute and learn how to do this, teach yourself how to do this privately and quietly. So you can be having a conversation with someone, even if it's just closing your eyes and or there's lots of different ways to do it. And you know what works best for you, but it's totally possible to reset in the middle of a challenging conversation. So work on including the resident in the conversation wherever possible. Focus on strengths rather than weaknesses. Get to know your colleagues' communication style. This can be really helpful because things that can come across as abrasive or short, complicated, might actually be their preferred communication style. So a lot of workplaces do different like personality profiling and communication style. And if you do that and if you have access to that, it can be helpful to read your colleagues and your supervisors, particularly because a lot of time conflict in communication can come between management if everyone's not on the same page. So brief your supervisor and involve them if necessary. Teamwork is more effective when everyone's on the same page. Briefing your supervisor means, and even if you have just like a second between shifts or just getting them involved, because it is important for everybody to be on the same page. If you don't know the answer to something, admit it. I do that all the time. And I mean, because I do it all the time, it's easier to do. But something that I pride myself in is if I don't know the answer, I admit it. And if I don't know the answer at all and I have no access to the information, I commit to getting more information and or connecting them with someone who has that information. This was a huge barrier when I worked in hospital is I just wouldn't accept us like I wouldn't present just a no. People have a question. There's someone that will know the answer if I don't know. There was someone that will know the pathway, the appropriate referral. All of that's there. It does mean a little more work on your part, but ultimately it benefits the resident, the client, their family or their loved ones more in the end. Yeah. So if you make a mistake, own it and follow the requisite path in your workplace for what to do if different types of mistakes, forms, etc. And you're only human, and as human beings, we all make mistakes. Okay, so that is my presentation today. Thanks everybody for being here and taking the time to listen and learn. We've got a few minutes for questions, and I'll be sharing my slides and whatnot to Carissa in the end. So yeah, feel free to.
Yeah, so if you have any questions for Kate, feel free to pop them in the chat. We had a comment from earlier. Someone said to have a curiosity mindset to learn more rather than just assuming, saying it will disarm and build bridges rather than creating unnecessary conflict and defensiveness. And I thought that was a really good one. But someone asked, what if we are not on the same page or have the same priorities?
Mm. That's tricky. I mean, for me, first step might be a conversation, and it can be very uncomfortable. Um, and try to have that conversation in a strength-based way, and avoid assumptions. So what that looks like is, avoid saying, hey, it seems like we're not on the same page, or we have totally different perspectives. Mine is right and yours is wrong. I don't think you're going to say that, but just having an open discussion. And sometimes we have to make, we have to let our guard down and we have to say, there's feeling like there's a bit of conflict here. Like, what's going on? Let's talk. So not making, and this goes for leadership as well, not making it a disciplinary conversation or identifying that the priorities are not in the same place and that your priorities are better. Yeah, I mean, someone just wrote interest-based perspective. Exactly. It's all about learning, and it's about meeting people where they're at, and just proceeding gently with caution and trying to work together.
There was another question here. To what if the person is unwilling to discuss or be open to change or discovery?
That can be challenging. I have dealt with these situations a few times where I do suggest talking to the supervisor, not in a tattletale way, but in a like, hey, this is conflict, and it's stressful. So like, let's see how we can make this work a little bit better. And if the conflict's with the supervisor, then that's also challenging in a different way. But it's really like finding your champions within your workplace, and the people that you connect with and the people that you can talk to, not necessarily to gossip. The objective isn't to say this person is doing this and it's driving me crazy and what do I do? It's more just to um, try to create a more fluid situation.
Someone else said this is a very interesting topic, and they would love for another workshop to be like this, and they'll share it with their leaders and their staff at the workplace. So that's great. There's another question here. I also wonder if even if on the surface there are different perspectives or different needs, but exploring if there's anything on a deeper level that is more aligned, or is there a way for both needs to be addressed without sacrificing the others?
Mhm. Um, I mean, just to touch on the surface, I mean, obviously I shouldn't say obviously, in my work, I do a lot of trauma-based therapy, and what can show up on the surface might be entirely different. You may have seen those diagrams that are like a little iceberg, right? So the iceberg, there's just the top of it coming over the water, and then underneath there's 40 million things going on. And so this does tie along to assumptions as well. As like we can't assume that what we're seeing, what we're being presented with is the whole story. So I link that back to communication. And I acknowledge that it's uncomfortable to have conversations with people, especially when there's challenges, when there's conflict. As a therapist, I do that a lot, like a gentle having a conversation, but I also acknowledge that sometimes it's better to just avoid it, but that will be a problem for you in the end. I've done that myself. I've just avoided, and ended up just leaving a job. And it, if I could go back, I wish that I would have been able to have a conversation. And just because when you just you, blah, even if you have a conversation, doesn't mean that the person is going to be open to learning, be open to change, be open to collaboration. But it's a good start. Yeah.
Someone else says, I wonder about how you make a shift to focus on strengths when the other person is focused on weaknesses. An example is a student who is struggling and wants to share the many reasons they are limited. How can I help them move to seeing how they can make changes and move ahead with their strengths?
Okay. A lot of times folks get stuck in this sort of pit of despair. and everything seems impossible and everything seems hard. But when you break it down, everybody has strengths. Every single person, no matter what they're doing or where they're at, they have strengths that you can find. They may not be able to see it inside themselves. And so this is also complicated because, sorry, ambulance zone. Um, I also really strongly suggest avoiding toxic positivity. And what toxic positivity is, today is a bad, it can look like today is such a bad day, everything's going wrong, it's a mess. And then someone saying, tomorrow will be better. Tomorrow won't necessarily be better. Um, it's really about making the person feel more comfortable in the situation that they're in. If they can't acknowledge where their strengths are, if they don't think they have any, um, there's lots of exercises and tools that, and it can be really hard for people, but you actually get them to identify strengths. And there's not, in the tools that I use, is there any focus on weaknesses? I hate in job interviews when they ask, tell me about your strengths and tell me about your weaknesses. Not super effective because it's the weakness to your perspective. Someone could be incredibly hard on themselves, and present like a million strengths, but in their head they have a million weaknesses. So again, it's back to connection too. Meeting the person where they're at and also focusing on their reality. So saying, you have tons of strength and you're awesome. Have a good day. Tomorrow will be better. Might not work very well in the conversation. But you also don't want to placate um, to their negativity. So yeah, it's finding a balance.